My wife laughed when I cried about losing my job, so I sold my shares, took the house, and left her with nothing but silence. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and for most of my life I believed marriage meant partnership, especially during hard times. My parents were the type to bicker about bills, but when it really mattered, they always closed ranks. Maybe that's why I worked so hard to build a steady life for myself and later for my wife, Taylor. I wasn't flashy. Never really cared about being the loudest guy in the room or the one who needed attention. My job at the logistics firm wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Almost 10 years of showing up early, picking up shifts no one wanted, quietly stacking away savings. Providing made me feel useful, like I had worth. Taylor, on the other hand, was everything I wasn't. Funny, magnetic, always the center of every party. She'd breeze through a room and somehow know everyone's story within 5 minutes. People gravitated to her. That's probably what drew me in, too. Her ambition made me feel alive, but sometimes it scared me. I'd watch her scroll through Instagram, laughing at influencers, making plans for weekends I knew we couldn't always afford. She had a way of making the ordinary feel temporary, like it was just a warm-up for something bigger. There was always a part of me that worried I wasn't enough for her. That someday, the slow and steady life I built would look too small from her perspective. I pushed those fears aside, focusing on work, on showing up. If I could keep everything running, I thought we'd be safe. We'd be happy. I was so sure that as long as I kept my head down and did my part, we'd face anything, together. That's what partnership meant to me, a hand to hold when things got rough. But then, out of nowhere, life threw the first punch. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of gray, drizzly morning that already felt heavy before anything even went wrong. I remember staring at my mug in the break room, thinking about how Taylor wanted to try a new brunch place that weekend. I was halfway through an email when the company-wide message popped up. Mandatory meeting, conference room, now. My stomach dropped. We all shuffled in, exchanging anxious glances. Our manager looked pale, voice shaky as he started reading from a script. Restructuring. Difficult decisions. By the time he said my name, I already knew. My heart hammered in my chest. I kept my face neutral, nodded along, but inside I was screaming. 10 years, gone, just like that. I packed my things in silence, fingers trembling as I tried to act like this was just another day. My coworkers avoided my eyes. I kept thinking, if I don't let it show, maybe it won't be real. But every step toward the exit felt like walking out of my own life. Driving home, the rain blurred the world outside. My phone buzzed. Taylor texting about dinner plans with friends, nothing urgent, just another night. I wiped my face on my sleeve, trying to figure out how to tell her. Would she be angry? Disappointed? Or maybe, just maybe, she'd put her arms around me and say we'd figure it out. When I finally walked in, Taylor was in the kitchen, humming along to some song, phone in hand. I set my bag down and tried to keep my voice steady. Hey, can we talk? She looked up, smile fading as she noticed my face. What happened? I told her everything, every stupid detail. She stared for a long moment, then let out a short, sharp laugh. Seriously? You lost your job? She shook her head, half smiling. Well, that's just great. The room felt colder. I stood there, waiting for a sign of understanding or support. Anything. But she just turned back to her phone. And that's when I realized the worst part wasn't losing my job. It was standing in front of the one person I needed most and feeling completely alone. That night, the weight of it all hit me. After dinner, Taylor barely spoke. She scrolled through her phone, occasionally letting out a laugh at something on Instagram. I tried to make small talk, but every word felt forced, brittle. Eventually, I gave up and went to the bedroom alone. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, the panic finally broke through. I'd never been unemployed before. My mind raced. Mortgage payments, bills, what if I couldn't find something soon? The shame was crushing. I buried my face in my hands, and before I knew it, the tears started. I couldn't stop them. They just kept coming. Everything I'd bottled up for years poured out in the dark. The door creaked open. Taylor stepped in, saw me hunched over on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking. I wiped my face, tried to hide it, but she saw. Oh, come on, she sighed. Are you seriously crying? I couldn't even answer. I just looked at her, hoping she'd sit next to me, hold my hand, anything. Instead, she snorted. God, you're being dramatic. It's just a job. Grow up. Her voice was flat, almost bored. Maybe if you'd worked harder, this wouldn't have happened. Her words hit harder than the layoff. I stared at her, stunned. She actually laughed, an ugly, sharp sound that echoed in the silence. "What, you want me to coddle you? You're a grown man. Figure it out." She turned on her heel and walked away, her laughter trailing behind her like poison. For a long time, I just sat there, numb. The only thing louder than her laughter was the voice in my head whispering that maybe I really wasn't enough. I didn't sleep that night. I just listened to the rain tapping the window, wondering when my home had stopped feeling safe. The next morning, I woke up before Taylor. My head throbbed with that hollow, sick feeling you get after a night of crying. I stared at her sleeping form, trying to remember the last time I'd felt close to her, really close the way I used to be before life got so heavy. I made coffee in silence, listening to the apartment creak and groan. The world felt unfamiliar, as if I'd woken up in someone else's story. As I sat at the kitchen table, memories started coming back, small moments, things I'd pushed aside for years. The time my dad was in the hospital, and Taylor rolled her eyes at how much time I spent there. The night I missed her friend's party because I was working late, and she refused to speak to me for days. When I didn't get that promotion, and she said, "Maybe you're just not cut out for management." I'd always explained it away. "She's ambitious, she's just being honest," I'd tell myself. But now it sounded like something else, like contempt. Taylor came into the kitchen, hair tousled, barely glancing at me. "You working on applications today?" she asked, voice clipped. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll get started after breakfast." She shrugged, already texting. "Good, I don't want to have to pick up your slack." The words stung. I tried to brush them off, but they burrowed under my skin. I realized I'd spent years ignoring red flags, convincing myself that every slight was just a fluke. My friends had warned me once, said Taylor only cared about herself. But I'd defended her, insisted she loved me. Now I was starting to wonder if I'd been lying to myself all along. I looked at her across the table and felt the tiniest flicker of fear. What if this was just the beginning? I threw myself into job applications with a kind of frantic energy that bordered on desperation. Every morning, I'd sit at the dining table, hunched over my laptop, cycling through LinkedIn, Indeed, anything with a now hiring sign. My heart would race every time I pressed submit. I told myself if I just landed something fast, everything would go back to normal. Taylor, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. She'd leave early, Pilates, coffee runs, endless errands with her friends. When she was home, she hovered in the background, scrolling on her phone, barely looking up. "Any luck?" she'd ask, but not like she cared. More like she was keeping tabs. She still bought things we didn't need. New shoes, takeout, another set of throw pillows for the couch. Every purchase was a reminder that I was falling behind, that my failure was now the backdrop to her life. Some nights, she'd complain about missing brunches or canceling a spa day because we have to budget now. Once, when I suggested skipping a weekend trip, she rolled her eyes. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you lost your job," she said, her voice laced with venom. I stopped trying to talk to her about how scared I was. I stopped expecting comfort. Instead, I took on more of the housework, trying to make myself useful, hoping that if I kept everything running, she'd notice. But it was never enough. At night, I'd lie in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sound of her laughter in the living room as she FaceTimed friends. Sometimes I wondered if she talked about me, if I was the punchline. Each day felt longer than the last. I kept telling myself things would get better, that this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew I was in this alone, and the loneliness was starting to eat me alive. One night, after another round of sleepless tossing, I padded into the living room for a glass of water. Taylor's laughter drifted through the door, her voice hushed and conspiratorial as she FaceTimed her best friend, Jess. I paused, unseen in the hallway. "He's just pathetic lately," she whispered. "I mean, you should have seen him cry. It was actually embarrassing." Jess cackled on the other end. "No, I don't feel bad. He's supposed to take care of things, not fall apart." My throat tightened. I backed away, hands shaking, the walls closing in. Later, when Taylor was asleep, I stared at the ceiling, replaying her words. I knew I shouldn't look, but curiosity gnawed at me. So I checked her Instagram. And there it was. Stories I'd never noticed, private posts only her friends could see. Little memes about unemployed husbands, inside jokes about keeping a man in check. She'd even posted a photo of me napping on the couch, captioned, "Hard at work, I see." Dozens of laughing emojis. I scrolled through group chats on her iPad, left open and carelessly unlocked. More of the same. Her friends egging her on, sharing stories about lazy men. She reveled in their attention, basked in their pity. The woman I married wasn't just unsupportive. She was actively turning my pain into her entertainment. I sat in the dark, phone screen glowing, chest hollowed out. My humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was currency, a running joke in a circle I could never penetrate. I wanted to confront her, to scream, but all I could do was sit there, heart pounding, wishing I could disappear. When the sun came up, I was still wide awake, drained but angrier than I'd ever been. If this was what Taylor was like behind my back, what else had I missed? A few days later, Taylor came home with that look she gets when she's about to spring something on me. I was at the table, scrolling through yet another round of job listings, when she dropped her bag with a loud thud. "So, Eric's moving in for a while," she said, not even looking at me. I blinked. "Your brother? Why?" She shrugged as if it was obvious. "He broke up with his girlfriend. He needs a place to stay. I already told him it's fine." I wanted to protest, to say our home was already on shaky ground, but the words wouldn't come. Eric was always the golden child, their parents' favorite, the one who never really had to grow up. He'd crashed on our couch before, usually bringing chaos and drama, but Taylor adored him. The house felt smaller the minute he arrived, louder, messier, filled with his jokes at my expense. Eric barely unpacked before he started making comments. "So you're a house husband now, huh?" He smirked one morning. Taylor laughed, brushing crumbs from the counter. "He's trying his best," she replied, but the sarcasm stung. It was open season on my dignity, and I was the running joke. The two of them would order takeout, host friends for movie nights, treat the place like a frat house while I holed up in the guest room, headphones on, pretending not to hear. Sometimes I'd overhear them. Eric saying I should just man up and get any job, Taylor agreeing. Never once defending me. I was losing my home, my pride, and whatever scraps of partnership I thought we still had. Every day I felt myself fading a little more, like a ghost haunting the life I built. One afternoon, while Taylor and Eric were out, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by the debris of our so-called life together. Takeout boxes, half-empty beer bottles, and bills we could barely cover. I was hunting for an insurance statement in our shared email when I saw it, a string of messages from a law firm, flagged important. My chest tightened as I opened them. The emails were about divorce consultations, dates, fee structures, lists of assets. I scrolled, numb, as I read Taylor's replies. She was strategizing with the lawyer, asking how soon she could get her share of everything, inquiring about the house, my savings, even the old family business I'd inherited from my grandfather. "Once he's working again, I'll file. Want to make sure I get what I deserve." The words felt like ice water down my spine. Worse, there were group texts with her friends. "I'm just biding my time," Taylor wrote. "He's so pathetic, he'll never see it coming." One friend replied with laughing emojis. Taylor. "By the time I'm done, I'll have the house, the cash, everything. He can keep his tears." That, more than anything, broke something inside me. My humiliation, my heartbreak, they were just steps in her plan. I sat at the table, hands trembling, world spinning. I wanted to confront her, to yell, to demand answers. But all I could do was close my laptop, swallow the rage, and stare at the silent, empty room. If this was how she saw me, just an obstacle, a stepping stone, then I couldn't trust anything we'd ever shared. I knew right then, if she was playing a game, I had to stop being the fool. For hours, I just sat there, pulse pounding in my ears, the betrayal replaying in loops. But somewhere in the wreckage, a different feeling crept in, cold, clear focus. I opened my files, pulled up every document I had, property deeds, business contracts, savings statements. For years, Taylor hadn't cared about the details. She'd always left the paperwork to me, too bored to bother. That turned out to be her biggest mistake. The house? Bought with money I inherited before the marriage, and the deed was in my name alone. The business shares from my grandfather? Legally classified as premarital assets. I had protected everything, following advice from my late father, who always told me, "People change when money's involved." Be careful. I'd thought it was overkill. But now I thanked him silently. I made an appointment with a lawyer, one of those cold, unblinking professionals who ask few questions and deliver even fewer reassurances. We combed through every account, every receipt, making sure there were no cracks. I moved cash to secure accounts, froze lines of credit, changed every password. I started documenting Taylor's spending, her absence, and every cruel message she sent. I was building a case, brick by brick, behind a mask of calm. At home, I acted normal. I cooked, did laundry, watched their dumb movies. I even laughed at Eric's jokes just to keep the peace. Taylor had no idea I'd seen her messages or met with anyone. She was too busy playing her game to notice mine. For the first time in months, I felt the balance shift. If Taylor wanted a war, she had no clue I still held the only cards that mattered. Taylor seemed to sense something had shifted, but she chalked it up to her own growing boldness. She started hosting bigger gatherings, loud, careless, packed with her friends and Eric's entourage. At one dinner, she raised her glass and toasted, "To surviving dead weight." Everyone laughed, and I forced a smile, cheeks burning. Later that night, as I cleared dishes from the chaos, I overheard Taylor in the hallway. "He's just there!" "Like a piece of furniture," she giggled to her friend. "Once this is all done, I'll be set. Trust me." I washed plates with my back to the room, knuckles white, replaying her words. Every slight was another tally, another scrap of evidence. I started saving her texts, the insults, the gloating, the posts she thought I'd never see. Friends, some of hers even, began sending me screenshots. "Dude, I'm sorry." "I didn't know she was like this," one message read. "If you need somewhere to crash, let me know." I realized people were starting to notice. Taylor's mask was slipping and sympathy for her was evaporating, but Taylor, oblivious, doubled down. She'd publicly roll her eyes at me, make jokes about my job hunt, and post thinly veiled digs online. She wanted me small and silent. Inside, I was already gone, calculating, waiting. One night, after everyone left, I looked around at the wreckage of our home. The empty bottles, the discarded food, the echo of laughter that wasn't meant for me. I stood in the kitchen, silent, knowing the end was coming, and that for once I wouldn't be the one humiliated. The night it all broke, it wasn't with shouting or doors slamming. It was just me, alone, listening to muffled laughter from the master bedroom where Taylor and Eric were watching a movie. I was in the guest room, my room now, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at a dinner of cold leftovers, barely tasting anything. I scrolled through job postings on my phone, but the words blurred together. I'd applied to everything, heard nothing back, and every day felt like a new kind of failure. I'd started ignoring texts from my friends, too embarrassed to explain why I never wanted to hang out. Taylor told people I was busy figuring things out, but the truth was, I was invisible in my own life. In the darkness, I heard Eric's laughter explode from the other room, followed by Taylor's voice, mocking, light, as if nothing mattered. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from shouting, from sobbing. This wasn't my home anymore. It was a set, and I was the extra who didn't even get a line. That night, I honestly thought about just leaving, walking out the door and never coming back. For the first time, I understood how people just disappear, how silence starts to sound like mercy. I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to disappear inside myself. At some point, I must have drifted off, but even my dreams were heavy, full of empty rooms and faces turned away. I woke to sunlight I didn't want. My chest ached, my hands shook. But in that rock-bottom silence, I finally made a choice. If I was going to lose everything, it wouldn't be quietly. If Taylor wanted a show, I'd give her an ending she'd never forget. The days that followed were strangely quiet, almost clinical. I moved through the house like a ghost, but there was a steadiness inside me now, like I'd stepped outside the eye of a storm. I boxed up what little I cared about, old photo albums, my dad's watch, some clothes, a few books. Taylor didn't even notice. She was too busy planning her next girls' night, Eric making himself at home, drinking my last decent whiskey without asking. I spent afternoons meeting with my lawyer, double-checking paperwork, transferring valuables to a friend's place for safekeeping. Every step felt sharper than the last, cold, methodical. I made lists, changed passwords, froze joint accounts, and moved my inheritance into a trust my father had once set up, just in case. I replayed every insult, every careless laugh, letting it harden me. If I felt any sadness, I buried it deep. At home, I kept up appearances. Quiet, helpful, invisible. I did the chores, cooked dinner, even smiled when Taylor made her usual digs. But I stopped responding. My silence became my armor. She noticed once, asked if I was finally accepting things. I just nodded and she shrugged, already bored. On the last night, I sat in the backyard, breathing in the cool air. For the first time in months, the silence didn't suffocate me. It felt clean. I realized I wasn't scared of losing Taylor or the life I'd built. I was ready to let go. As the sky faded from gray to black, I rehearsed what I'd say tomorrow, the words that would finally set me free. And for the first time, I felt something like hope. The next morning, I asked Taylor and Eric to meet me in the living room. Taylor looked annoyed, still in her robe, scrolling her phone. Eric sprawled on the couch, eyes glazed. My heart hammered, but my voice was steady as I set the folder on the coffee table, documents arranged in perfect damning order. "We need to talk," I said quietly. Taylor rolled her eyes. "Is this about another job interview?" "No, this is about us." I slid the folder toward her. "Go ahead. Read it." She flipped through the pages. Property deeds, bank statements, trust documents, a copy of the prenup she'd signed and forgotten about. The more she read, the paler she got. Eric sat up, frowning. "What's all this?" I looked at him, then at Taylor. "It means everything you thought you'd take isn't yours. The house, the shares, the savings, they're protected. Legally, you don't get them." Taylor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. For the first time in years, she was speechless. "But you can't," I cut her off. "I can, and I have. These are the divorce papers." I slid them forward. "You have 30 days to move out. After that, you're trespassing," Eric sputtered. Taylor's face twisted, cycling through shock, rage, then disbelief. "You planned this," she spat. I nodded. "For months!" She lunged for her phone, but I stood. "The accounts are frozen. The cards are canceled. I've already spoken to your lawyer. He'll confirm everything." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the realization that her game was over. I picked up my keys and walked out the front door, the morning sun blinding and beautiful on my face. Behind me, I heard only silence. The next few weeks passed in a blur, but for the first time in ages, I didn't feel powerless. Taylor raged, threatened, pleaded, cycling through every tactic she had. She sent me long, furious texts. Then when that didn't work, she tried guilt. "We can still fix this, you're overreacting." But I didn't reply. I blocked her number, ignored her emails, let my lawyer handle every ugly detail. Word got out faster than I expected. Friends who'd once sided with Taylor started hearing the truth. Some through whispers, others through screenshots she'd posted herself. Her stories about being the victim unraveled as people saw her cruelty in black and white. One by one, her circle shrank. Eric moved out after a week, embarrassed by the mess he'd helped create. When Taylor finally left, she packed her things with icy silence. I watched from the doorway as she loaded her car, refusing to look back. The house felt empty but lighter. I walked room to room, letting the stillness settle around me. I sat in the living room that night, feet up on the coffee table, breathing in the quiet. No more taunting laughter echoing down the hall. No more walking on eggshells. The silence wasn't loneliness anymore, it was freedom. There were still loose ends, court dates, paperwork, but inside I felt an unfamiliar calm. I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving. I was just free. The weeks after Taylor left felt like waking up from a long, confusing dream. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, but slowly I started filling the silence with something better, my own life. I got up early again, but not because I had to. I took long walks around the neighborhood, nodding to neighbors I'd barely spoken to for years. Sometimes I stopped at the park, just to sit with a coffee and listen to the world go by, no one judging, no one demanding. I finally reached out to my old friends, the ones I drifted away from when Taylor needed all my attention. At first I was embarrassed, but their warmth surprised me. "We wondered where you went, man," one said, clapping me on the back. We laughed about old times, watched a game together, even talked about work. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as a failure, but as myself. I started therapy, too. The first session, I could barely speak without choking up. But little by little, I unpacked the guilt and shame, Learned how to forgive myself for loving someone who never really loved me back. My therapist said healing wasn't linear. Some days I believed her. I kept busy, cooking my own meals, fixing things around the house, planning for a future I'd almost given up on. Each small victory, nailing a new recipe, landing a promising interview, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every night I'd walk through the rooms, grateful for the peace. I realized I was no longer haunted by what I'd lost. I was finally free to imagine what came next. If you've read this far, maybe you know what it's like to be laughed at for feeling too much. Maybe you've been the butt of someone's joke, the sensitive one, the weak one, the person who cared too deeply and got burned for it. If so, I want to tell you something I wish I'd heard sooner. You are not weak for hurting, and you're definitely not broken for wanting love to mean more than survival. There were nights I thought I'd never get out. Days when Taylor's voice, her laughter, her scorn, echoed in my head and made me question if I deserved better. I let someone else decide my value for so long that I forgot I even had a say. The turning point wasn't just the day I found out about her plans, or when I took back what was mine. It was the morning I realized that I didn't need to justify my pain to anyone. That feeling, real, raw, messy, is what makes us human. I want to say this to anyone still stuck in the dark. Document everything. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking your suffering is imaginary. Quiet revenge can be louder than any public spectacle. Sometimes the best closure is walking away and letting your absence speak for itself. Block the numbers. Change the locks. Let silence be your reply. Healing isn't pretty and it's never instant, but it's possible. I'm not who I was before, but I'm not broken either. I've built something better. Peace, self-respect, a home where I can finally breathe. Tonight, I'm sitting in my living room, lights dim, rain tapping against the windows. And for the first time in years, I feel whole. I hope wherever you are, you find your own way out. You deserve it.